Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What. Today we've got Robert on, and he's the founder and CEO of Zing Cover. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good. Great, thanks.
Perfect. Robert, let's jump straight in. Do you want to tell everyone a bit about what you do?
So I am CEO of Zing Cover, and Zing Cover is trying to take insurance out of its staid old marketplace of household and contents insurance that no one really wants to think about, and put it where customers want it, at the checkout of the e-commerce apps and websites that they already know, use, and trust, and get really relevant cover that does what it says on the tin, that can be intuitively managed, expanded, and indeed stopped if customers want within our own app.
So it's Insuratech, basically. This is taking insurance and build it for the 21st century.
Yeah, it's taking insurance and trying to adapt it to modern consumer behavior.
So is that almost like when I'm just going to use the analogy of maybe someone's ordering TV from a well-known company online, it gets to the end of the checkout and there's like the tick box, would you like this insurance for X amount of time? Are you doing that but with other products?
We're doing that, but it could be with the example you've raised. We've got a home tech and audio coverage subscription that could cover those items. It could be for your clothes, shoes, and bags. It could be for your bike or your watches and jewelry. What we hear from consumers today is that they want peace of mind that their important purchases, hires, and day-to-day activities are properly protected, but they find the complex insurance applications and these amorphous policies of contents and liability and homeowners just off-putting and mystifying. So they want to protect those important things in their life, but they want it to be intuitive. They want it to do what it says on the tin, and they want it to be easily accessible with one click at the checkout.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of interesting because I was talking to my other half about contents insurance the other week, actually. And it's like, I hear stories of people saying something happened and they go to claim on things and it's like, oh yeah, that's not covered. Oh yeah, that's not covered. And I suppose you only need to be covered on certain things like, your TV, you want that to be covered. And it's almost, you're taking away having to pay a large sum for everything that may or may not be covered. And you can almost just specify what you want to be covered because that's the important stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to achieve with Zing. So it starts with, important things that you're buying, and you think, yeah, actually, I just want to know that that's covered. And then, as you say, we aim to create a really easy, intuitive app where if our customers then want to expand what they buy from us and cover other important things about their home that matter to them, they can do that easily, or they don't. But the key thing is that it's transparent, it's fair. They can just see what's covered, because there's that awful question that anyone gets if they go onto an insurer's website to buy contents of insurance of, what are all the value of your contents worth? Are they worth £25,000 or £50,000? And I know that, I look at that question, I think, oh gosh, that's an awful lot of money. I wouldn't need that if something happened. But if you break it down a bit more intuitively, if something happened to my wardrobe, what are the clothes I'd need for, the next 3 social events and, going to work next week in the days when we used to do such things. and it's a bit more than most people think. So you've got to break insurance down and make it more relatable to people's actual lifestyles.
So Robert, how did you get into insurance in the first place?
Well, I guess no one sets out to spend their life in insurance when they're growing up. It's not one of those careers. So I guess I'm like many people who work in insurance, that I fell into it by accident. I came out of university not really knowing exactly what I wanted to do in life. My first job was working for an auction house, I did that for a couple of years and decided that maybe the world of art and jewellery auctioneering wasn't necessarily for me. And someone said, well, there's an insurance company that wants people that understand about these kind of things. And I went and spoke to them and found myself working as an underwriter in the London insurance market.
Wow. So how many years were you doing that for?
Oh, I started as an underwriter in 2006, I think it was. And that was working in the very traditional insurance market, that quite conservative world of the Square Mile in London and the Lloyds of London market that some people might know about.
What is the Lloyds of London market for those who are a bit unaware how that process works?
So I guess before I answer that, I mean, one of the great things about insurance, if we can use a sentence like that, is that the UK is and has been pretty well all the way along a leading global centre of insurance. And there aren't that many industries where that's consistently always been the case. Now, part of that is down to Lloyds of London, which is the only insurance trading market in the world. It's essentially a marketplace where brokers can go and place risks with underwriters in a very flexible way. So you get unusual risks, high value risks. You get a lot of innovation of products taking place there because it's a place where underwriters and brokers can interact in a very flexible way. And what's grown up around Lloyd's is just a very buoyant insurance market in this particular little corner of the city of London.
So what made you go from the traditional classical, Lloyds of London insurance to Insuratech? Why make that kind of move?
Well, I think, when we talk about the UK and London in particular of being a global centre for insurance, over the history that's been the case, innovation and adapting to the times has been a really important part of it. We talk about the big Lloyds of London and side of it there, but actually the UK was at the forefront of developing sort of wraparound homeowners and contents policies that I was just talking about. The UK was at the forefront of creating aggregators and price comparison sites for insurance. So the UK has a proud tradition of innovation, but it needs to keep doing that. And I was conscious in my career that if I want to guarantee a career for myself until whatever age I fortunately get to retire, you've got to keep up with modern behavior. You've got to make sure that we adapt in terms of the products we create, in terms of our distribution, in terms of our service, that we are actually delivering what modern buyers want. And I didn't feel that the industry was doing that as brilliantly as it could. And I got to a point where I thought actually I could deliver on what I thought needed to be done better from a small, nimble startup than working within a big listed company.
Okay, interesting. So for those that have listened and know that I used to be in the Lloyd's market, I actually used to broke to Robert. Unfortunate for Robert, but
it was always a pleasure.
You have to say that. And I always felt the same. Being in the industry, and I think it's interesting for people that are thinking about going into the industry now to get kind of a thought from us, the people that have been in it and done it. Would you go down the traditional route if you were going into it now, or would you look to go to a startup and learn insurance that way? What would you do?
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer because I have done the traditional route first. I guess, and nor am I qualified to talk on behalf of Insuratech. But I guess what I would say is that there are an awful lot of really brilliant Insuratechs out there where all of the founding team have come from outside the insurance industry.
Interesting.
And I think that's understandable, because often it's the end user that realizes the problems inherent in any one industry. And therefore, they are the right people to take that really, radical approach and see things through a completely fresh set of eyes. What I'd say in terms of what we've done at Zing is, I think, knowing the industry from the inside, I felt did leave me pretty well equipped to see what the limitations of change, but also what the untapped potential for change was from within the industry. But equally, my co-founder had previously had nothing to do with insurance. He comes from a consumer technology background, and he was frankly horrified when he looked at how things were being done in terms of consumer technology in the insurance sector. And that's really good. And between the two of us alone, we have daily challenge and back and forth as to what is the best way to approach this particular problem. So that's a real sitting on the fence answer to your question about Insuratech. I guess in terms of your point about what would I say to someone going into the traditional industry now, I mean, I'd say, look, it needs bright, innovative people with fresh ideas. So there's definitely still a place for talented people to go into what we're putting in inverted commas here, the traditional insurance market. As I say, we're still fortunate in this country that the UK and London in particular is a global leader in insurance. So in terms of career trajectory, you can have a really global career based in London, and that's attractive to a lot of people. And of course, the traditional market, we're going to keep calling it that, is changing pretty rapidly as well. I mean, as you alluded to there, Dan, there was a time when you used to physically come and sit at my desk, or box as insurers refer to it, and broker risk to me. Well, that's a pretty inefficient and outmoded way to be transacting business now. And that's all changing. I think the insurance market has needlessly resisted digitization for a long time. But this, the last 18 months of the pandemic has forced digitization, and it's forced new ways of working, because meeting in one building, in one big underwriting room in the Lloyds of London building, just wasn't possible for a long period of time. And so all those people who said it wasn't possible to digitize, it wasn't possible to do remote placement of risk, they have had to eat their words a bit. And I think that will be an accelerant for change in what we still dub the traditional market.
I think you're right. I think, definitely from my point of view, I think it needed to evolve and change, but also I'm a little bit sad that it is changing, because for me, that was the best part of doing the job, was actually coming to Lloyd's and doing the broking, and that was the fun of the job. And it did need to change, but I think people just held on to it because that was really, that was the bit everybody kind of enjoyed.
But, it's still a relationship business in a way that, most industries at their core are a relationship business. If we take it back to the Zing example, we're as far removed from the Lloyd's face-to-face trading market as you can get. We're sending APIs out of e-commerce platforms that generate pricing and coverage for people's insurance, automatically issue their policy documentation, manage it all in an app. They've never had to speak to a person in any part of that process. But what sits behind our ability to offer that is, we have underwriters sitting behind Zing who are providing our underwriting capital. That's relationship based. We need to work on those relationships. our customers are delivered to us by partner brands who want to host Zing on their e-commerce platforms. That's a relationship, and it's a relationship that needs to be worked at and maintained. So the relationship bit of the business is going to change, but it's not. Technology is not going to remove it. It's just going to change it.
It's a very interesting point. And for you, thinking about skill sets that people will need in insurance going forward, what would be some things that you'd advise people work on or think about concentrating on to become really valuable as insurance moves forward?
Oh gosh, that's a tricky question. I mean, going back to when I started, I read history at university, then I went to work for an auction house. I think that probably on paper makes me pretty poorly qualified to do an insurance role, as most people would see it. And indeed, in other parts of the world, it's much more likely that you'd go into insurance having done a degree in risk management, say.
Mm-hmm.
In Germany, that would be very much the case. And one of my employers, where I was responsible for part of their German operation, I think the underwriters there were slightly horrified when they found out that my qualification for coming to this was a history degree and selling art and jewellery for a couple of years. But I think, as is the case with most jobs, it's about good instincts. It's about learning from good people. It's about good communication skills, and going back to that relationship point, it's about an ability to foster and build good relationships. That's the core of most businesses.
Yes, certainly. And for you, what has been maybe the biggest positive you've got from working in insurance?
The biggest positive in insurance. I have enjoyed my career in insurance up to now, and I hope there's many years of it to come. And I think it's a huge industry that's very multifaceted. With Zing, we're looking at a particular consumer problem, but you could equally be looking at cyber threats to major listed companies. You could be looking at the growth of space tourism. It could be any number of areas that carry risk. That's where the insurance industry has to come in. So it's sheer variety, I guess, is one of its endearing qualities.
And on the flip side of that, what would be some less favorable aspects of this industry?
It normally kills a dinner party conversation.
Yeah, that's why I don't invite Dan over.
A former boss of mine once said that in terms of dinner party introductions, saying you work in insurance is somewhere between tax accountancy and dentistry.
Yes, very true.
So I've just insulted another two professions there to do.
And for you, what's something, particularly now you're going into a more of a tech world, what's something that you never expected to be having to deal with, moving more into this new era of insurance?
Gosh, there's lots there. I mean, on a personal level, I've always worked for big listed companies before. You come in and you're employed to do a job, but there's a whole infrastructure around you. There's all these people around you. You've got people to help with design, with marketing, with legal, with compliance. And I remember the first day starting Zing, when it was literally me and my co-founder sat across a desk from each other. And, I had some minor IT problem or other, probably not a great thing to admit to somebody now runs a tech company. And I found myself looking over my shoulder. Who's the person I'm going to ask to come and help with this? And I realized, there's no one now.
Yeah.
It's just us. And that's an enormously exhilarating thing, and also a slightly scary thing. And you realize that, you need to do the payroll or no one gets paid. And you need to make sure that, all our subscriptions are paid and our rent, the real mundane bits of running a business, there's nowhere to hide. And in terms of, what's, I guess, been interesting and got me infused is that I did come into this from an insurance background, and I thought I had a pretty good idea about what needed to change in terms of insurance product delivery to meet what consumers want now better. But I'm not a tech person. I didn't have a tech background, and so the delivery of that, just was something I was wholly unqualified to do, and learning that whole side of it, and learning about how the technology actually then becomes fundamental to the product you're creating and fundamental to the delivery and to the consumer experience. The two become completely intertwined, and that's been a really interesting side of the development of Zing that I haven't had previously in my career.
What would be your best piece of advice, or your number one piece of advice for somebody thinking about going into insurance these days, whether it be tech or whether it be the traditional market? Regardless, what would your best piece of advice be for that person?
Try and talk to as many people in the industry as possible.
Great one.
I don't think that's anything unique to insurance. I think that if there's any industry that you want to get into or simply want to find out more about, I think you'll find that, for the most part, you can always find people who are happy to be reasonably generous with their time and their experience and their connections. That's been a nice thing at the last 18 months on Zing for me, is that, in the bit of the insurance world I was in, I'd got to the point where, I know everyone, and a lot of people know me, and it's all, I know who to call on for this situation or that situation. And then the life of the startup is actually, you don't know it all. In fact, there's an awful lot you don't know. And there's an awful lot of people you need to speak to that you don't know how to get connected to them. And again, it's that sort of, it's a bit sort of, without getting all soppy about it, it's a bit reaffirming about people, that actually there's an awful lot of people out there who are very happy to take half an hour for a phone call and say, I understand your problem. I'd go about it this way. I'd speak to that person, or have you met this person? They'd be great to help you there. I think it carries across all industries. Insurance is no exception. Get out there, start speaking to people, and that way you can find out if it's going to be right for you, if it's not going to be right for you, and if it is, where in that vast great industry you might fit in best.
Great advice.
And would you still go into this industry knowing everything you know now, for both the normal insurance world that you've been a part of and now the tech side of it as well?
I'm sure in a parallel universe, I could have had many other careers in completely different other sectors that I'd have found fulfilling and enjoyable, and that would have taken me in wholly different directions that I don't have. I don't have any major regrets about the route I took.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Robert, and having a chat. I think what you're doing with Zing is really exciting, and really interesting.
Great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you, Robert. If anyone wanted to find your company, where can they sort of find that and reach out?
www.zingcover.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Robert.
Great. Thank you, guys.